this is Jeff from Heroes and Legends, and today is our sixth part to the Dragons of Tarkir set review. Today we're looking at the multicolor and colorless cards, and this is where a lot of the action is in this set. So there's some big cards to talk about. Let's just jump right in. We'll go in color pie order, and we'll start out with Cunning Breeze Dancer. And this guy is a limited bomb. He's a 4/4 for 6, and if you have a Jeskai build, you can pump him till end of turn, and he gets even bigger. Really nice card for limited, and he's an uncommon, so there's going to be a lot of him floating around, and you'll see this theme. There is a whole theme of these uncommon dragons that are going to be very good and limited. Now, a little too pricey for constructed, but great limited card. Dragonlord or Jute, and here's one of the legendary mythic rare Elder Dragons, and he's another limited bomb for 5. You get a 5/4 flyer, and he can protect himself, and he lets you dig for cards. He's also a very reliable commander and can be used as a commander, and he's so strong he could even find a place in a control deck. I kind of looked at some of these cards and thought, wow, I wonder if they're could be a Dragon's control deck in Standard. It seems like the pieces might be there. Don't know if it's going to be strong enough to make it there, but if it is, this guy could be a part of that deck. Card is Necrot Transcendence. This is our first Planeswalker we're looking at. Like all Planeswalkers, she's a limited bomb. Even if you're not playing a heavy Jeskai, lots of instant sorcery builds, guess what? You're still going to go ahead and play her. If nothing else, she can absorb some damage as your opponent will get very transfixed on her, as opposed to attacking you outright in a lot of cases, and that alone is worth the 4 mana. However, yeah, she may give you card advantage, and if she does, that's awesome. That could be huge for you. Also, if you have the right deck, she can rebound some instant sorceries. She's just all value unlimited. She's fantastic. I'm sure there's going to be a home for her somewhere in Standard Control. This is a great control card where Control's got a lot of extra mana anyway, and they're going to have a lot of non-creature spells in their deck that they're going to be able to get card advantage off of and just kind of go off. So she's going to be really fine in that regard. In fact, she's already being sold pre-orders for like $50. So there's a lot of speculation that she's going to do some work. Now, I do think most of that work's going to be in Standard. I think she could have really shined in Legacy, but she's a little expensive, and she's competing with cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor at the forecasting cost level. And I don't know if I'm replacing Jace in my Legacy deck with her. I just not seeing that. Overall, the only other critique I have with her is her ultimate's a little weak. I feel like ultimating Planeswalkers should be a little more impressive. That's a good ultimate maybe for Legacy, but I don't know. It just seems kind of odd to me that it's not a little stronger. Now, I don't like overpowered Planeswalkers that have super ultimates either, that are just like game-ending scoops. So I like that they've kind of watered down some of these ultimates, but this one feels like maybe they've gone a little too far. Ultimately, she's a fine card. She's going to do a lot of work. Next one is Jute's Command, and this is the first of this command cycle, and these are all just super powerful, versatile cards. All of them are going to have some play in Standard, I think. This is perfect for a Standard control deck, and is going to be another piece of maybe that blue-white control or Dragon's control if it exists. And there's just so much you can do with this thing. It just blows my mind how good these cards are. They're going to be great in limited. They're going to be great in constructed. And I could see this making some modern play as well. Pristine Skywise. And here's another limited bomb. It's a 6/4 for 6. You'll be more than happy to play a flying dragon at that level. And he can kind of protect himself too, which is pretty good. He's a little too pricey for constructed, but he's a great limited guy. Dragonlord Solmagar, and this is the blue legendary Elder Dragon, and another really nice creature in limited, flying death touch, and it lets you steal a creature or a planeswalker. And this one's kind of fun because imagine your opponent has a planeswalker that they're about ready to ultimate or something like that. You can just swoop in and take them and do the ultimate yourself. That's kind of cool. So this is a really awesome card. It's another really strong commander as well, and will be a great commander in some decks. And it's a little pricey, I think, to make it into that dragon control or control deck. It's cost 6, and what it's doing isn't necessarily what the control deck maybe needs to do. They hopefully will have counter spells or removal to deal with creatures and planeswalkers, but he's there if they need him. I just don't really think he'll make the cut there, but really awesome card. Necromancer Dragon. And this guy's another limited bomb, 4/4 for 5. You're going to be more than happy to play him. His effect's not quite as strong as some of the other effects we saw. It kind of gives you the ability to pay 2 after it does combat damage to get a 2/2 creature, which is not bad by any means. It's pretty awesome and limited, and also mills your opponent a little bit. So, decent card, and I just don't think it's going to make it into, say, standard at the cost of 5. There's just better things you can be doing for 5, but he's definitely a limited bomb. Ruthless Deathfang, and here's another dragon. It's a 6 casting cost 4/4 flyer, and he's a little more situational. I mean, again, limited bomb, you're going to be more than happy to play him, but his ability is very situational, whereas your opponent has to sack a creature. If you sack a creature, that's awesome. You do have to set that up a little bit, though, and when you're paying 6 for a guy, I would hope that you don't have to do as much setup as this one is making you do, but not to get too far into the weeds, basically, all that means is it's just priced a little too high for constructed decks, but it's a really good limited card, and I feel like casually, and maybe even in Commander, there's definitely some play you could do with this card to make it better. Solmagar's command, and here's the command for black and blue. And this is just another house. Now, this is the most expensive of the commands, but it can kill a planeswalker and kill a creature as an instant. It can bounce a creature, kill a creature. It can counter a spell, kill a creature. It's just, these cards are just insane, and I love them. So, yeah, you're going to play it in limited, and it's certainly going to show up in constructed. It's easily in standard. It gets a little pricey when you start talking modern, but it's so powerful that it could possibly make it into modern as well if the right deck is out there for it. Boltwing Marauder, and this guy's a 5/4 for 5, so another just house in the air. You're going to be happy to play him. And this one's a little more creature-centric now. Another creature enters the battlefield, it gets a power pump. That's fantastic. This is going to be a great guy for a lot of aggressive decks in Commander. I could see this guy being a good guy to have in like the token deck, stuff like that. Could be a high-end curve card for a standard aggro deck too. Even though he costs 5, he is a 5/4 flyer and he can be pumped. So I do like him a lot. Dragonlord Culligan, and here's our third Dragonlord, and he's just as impressive as the others. He costs 6 for a 6/5 flying haste, so he gets right in there, right in the red zone as soon as you cast him. And he also gives all your other creatures that you cast after him haste as well. That's awesome. And his clause is very interesting, and I don't know if I've seen anything quite like this before, but basically it prevents your opponent from casting a spell that already has a copy of that spell in their graveyard, but it doesn't restrict you, so you can still cast multiple copies of spells. That is crazy when you think about it. Now, let's talk about limited first. Great limited guy, absolutely. He's a house, you're going to use him. Commander, he's going to be a great commander, fantastic commander. Now, unfortunately, commander, where you're playing one-ofs, his extra ability doesn't do much for you, but he still would make a great commander with everything else. And then you got to think to yourself, can this guy make it into constructed decks? 6 is expensive. Standard, yeah, standard, you can probably get him in there. He'd be very damaging to control decks, I think, in standard. Very damaging, because they're going to like to play a lot of multiple copies of spells. But you're going to have to start thinking, even in eternal formats, even in things like modern, you're going to have to start thinking, do I play 4 copies of this card, or maybe I play 3 copies in something else? Are there copies that are virtual identical versions of a card where I can play 2 of one name and 2 of another name because I might run into this guy? It just makes for some very interesting questions when it comes to the design space going forward in the future, especially in standard. So I really like this guy. I like what he's done. I don't know what's going to happen with him when it comes to constructed necessarily, but he's a house, and watch out for him. This is a really interesting card. Culligan's command, and here's another command cycle. This one's a little cheaper than the last one at 3, but still it just does work for you, whether it's destroying an artifact or just making a player discard a card. It's just got so much versatility, and it's cheap. It's going to be a great card. It's going to see standard play. This one may be the weakest out of the 5, but it's still awesome, so not complaining by any means. Swift Warkite, and he's another limited bomb. He costs 6. You get a 4/4 flyer, but you also get to possibly take a creature back from your graveyard, or else kind of haste out a creature from your hand and return it to your hand. So it's a really good card. Too pricey for what it does in constructed, but really fun limited guy. Atarika's Command, and here is yet another one of the command cards. And this one, it only costs 2. It's incredibly cheap. And thinking back to recent history, there's a card Skullcrack that basically was 2 of the bullet points on the card. Opponents can't gain life this turn, or actually, I believe Skullcrack was just the opponent you're targeting can't gain life this turn, and it dealt 3 damage to that person. So this is almost like a mini Skullcrack, but then it has other options, and also it works for all opponents. That's amazing. So very cheap spell, gonna be awesome and limited. Definitely good enough to see standard and modern play. Very nice utility card for red burn. Nice commander card as well that it kind of affects the entire board in all opponents and not just one. Just really like this a lot. Dragonlord Atarka, and here's the Elder Dragonlord, and this guy just makes a huge impact on the board. Yeah, he costs 7, he's expensive, but he's an 8/8 flying trample, and he does 5 damage divided among any creatures and planeswalkers on the board. The only thing, I mean, obviously they had to do this, the only thing that's maybe not so intuitive is he can't target players, but he can target planeswalkers, which is interesting. But I like that design. I like that they've done that because it makes planeswalkers a little vulnerable without necessarily having to worry about, shoot, I don't want to play this card and it does 5 to the face and then it gets in for 8 next turn to a player. That way it would have been way too powerful. So I really like what they did here. He's another limited bomb. Awesome commander, has a big effect when he enters the board. I do think he's going to be too slow for constructed, but he just does so much. You never know. Someone might be able to find a way to ramp into this guy, and he could be a decent constructed card. Right now, there's not a lot of ramp out there that's powerful, but if that changes, and it could change with Battle for Zendikar, because I'm sure there's going to be ways to ramp into Eldrazi's, this guy might become better. Harbinger of the Hunt, and he's another limited bomb, 5 for 5/3 dragon. He's flying. One little thing to note with this guy, which makes him different from past cards like this, is when he deals damage to all the other flyers, it's other creatures with flying, so he doesn't damage himself. That's pretty awesome, actually, especially considering you're going to have probably a board full of dragons a lot of times in this format. So he's awesome, and he's a little bit of a mana sink. He's going to do more for you late game than he's going to do for you early game, but late game you're going to love this guy. Heck, early game you're going to love this guy. Why not? So he's an awesome limited bomb. I think he's a little too slow for constructed, just because his body isn't as big as some of the other dragons, of being 5/3. He's going to die a little quicker, and his effect really isn't going to do much until later in the game. Although, if you're playing against an aggro deck, wow, he's going to wipe the board for you. So you never know, but I think he might be a little overcosted for what he does. Savage Ventmaw. This is a real interesting one. He's a 6 casting cost 4/4 flyer, so once again, he's going to make it into limited. He's a limited bomb, and he's an uncommon. Now, when he attacks, you get 6 more mana, so I kind of asked myself the question, like, well, if I've already cast this guy for 6, do I really need 6 more mana, or is that just a win more at that point? Like, I'm just kind of rolling an extra mana. Do I need that extra mana? What am I really doing with it at that point in the game? And the answer is, yeah, it probably is a win more, but right now. But what about when Battle for Zendikar comes out? This might be a great way to ramp into Eldrazi. So this is a guy who may be a future commodity. Right now, he's a fine limited guy. I don't know if you're going to need him for constructed. 6 for a 4/4 is a little overpriced, and at that point, I don't think you will need more mana than that constructed. Arishin Sovereign, and he's another house. He's going to cost you 7 for a 6/6, so he's a little pricey, but he's hard to get rid of, which is kind of nice. But he's a limited bomb. Probably won't see constructed play, though. Dragonlord Dramoca, and here's the last of the Dragonlords, and he is a great standard, I think, anti-control card. He can't be countered, he's got flying and lifelink, and your opponent can't cast spells during your turn. That's awesome, and he's a 5/7 body, so he's just going to do so much. He's awesome and limited. He's another great commander, just really hard to deal with, hard to get rid of commander, and he's just so much hoses the control decks that he might find his way into standard just because of that. So he'll be another one that'll be interesting to watch. Dramoca's Command. Here's the last of the command cards. Another 2 casting cost 1, and just another powerful, super pushed instant. And this whole set of cards is just going to be a staple, I think, in modern as well as standard for some time to come. This is just a great card. It does a instant speed hunt the weak with the last 2 bullet points, and then it's got other options as well. So that's crazy. It's definitely powerful enough for standard and modern play. This whole cycle is just awesome. Enduring Scalord, and he's a 6 for a 4/4 flyer, so probably a little too slow for constructed, but he can be pumped up, especially with an Obzon strategy. He's a great limited guy. You're going to be very happy to play him, and even happier to play him in an Obzon build. Sarcan Unbroken, and Sarcan's going for a little bit less than in our set as far as preloaders go, and I think it's just because as far as standard goes, he's probably not standard playable. He's just a little too pricey in 3 different colors. However, like all Planeswalkers, he's a limited bomb, and this guy is actually probably better than Narset and Limited, just because if you can get him out, now granted, he's harder to cast, he's more expensive, more colors, but if you do get him out, draw a card every turn and add a mana of any color to your mana pool, yeah, that's huge. That's game breaking right there. And the fact that you can throw out some creatures so he protects himself, and that's really the marquee of a great Planeswalker. Can they protect themselves? He can protect himself with 4/4 red dragon tokens. And his ultimate is kind of hilarious. I mean, it's begging to be used in Commander in a Dragon's deck, obviously, but really amazing card. Just a fun card. I really like this a lot. So yeah, play him in Limited. He's going to get you value. Play him in Dragon's decks and Commander just because, if for nothing else, you got to try to ultimate that guy. Yeah, maybe he's a little too pricey for constructed, but he's a fun card. And we move into the colorless cards, or colorless card, really. Sign of Ugin. And yeah, you're paying 6 for a 4/4 flyer. He's okay if you need a 4/4 flyer in your deck. I'll be honest with you, I can't imagine being in a situation where I'm going to say to myself, wow, I really need one more expensive flyer in my deck that doesn't really do anything in Dragons of Tarkir. So I don't think he's making the limited build very frequently. But he's there if you need him. And, you know, all these colorless cards, including the artifacts that will be coming up, keep an eye on those when Zendikar comes out, because I think there is going to be a colorless matters sort of theme. And you tie that in with a card like this that also has a Dragons Matters theme in this set, and they might become better cards in the future. So we'll just have to keep an eye out. And we get to our first artifact, Ancestral Statue, and one theme you'll kind of see is most of the artifacts in this set are not very pushed, and which is fine. They're obviously pushing the creatures in the set and some of the spells and enchantments. You don't want to need to push the artifacts as well. So this guy, he's there for you. He's a limited creature that doesn't demand any colors if you're desperate for a creature and maybe your draft didn't go as well as you wanted it to and you end up getting this guy. You could play him, but in most cases you're probably not going to play him unless you have a comes into play trick that you want to play and bounce a creature or really non-land permanent and then replay it for an effect. Other than a situation that's very specific, he's not that good. Atarika Monument, and we'll see there's a whole cycle of these. Limited color fixing if you need it. It's a little bit of an expensive effect, but the effect is a 4/4 flyer, which is a big deal in limited. So this guy, I think when you play these cards, you're going to ask yourself first, A, do I need mana fixing? If I do need mana fixing, the next question is, can I wait to the third turn for my mana fixing, or do I need to just play an extra land? If you can wait to the third turn, then maybe splashing one of these is okay. I want to get crazy with these because they are a big mana commitment to actually turn them into creatures, but they do ramp you slightly. I compare these to the banners a little bit, but I do think they are better than banners because you can get a 4/4 flyer out of them. The banners I didn't really like. I'd occasionally play a banner if I was just really desperate for the color fixing. So these are similar, but like I said, I think they are better than banners, and you'll see them played a little more than banners. It'll be interesting to see where they fall in limited. Custodian of the Drove, and he's a 2/5 defender, but he comes into play tap, so he's cheap, but he's a little bit slow, so you don't really get to start using him as a blocker even till the fourth turn if you play him on the third. He's a cheap way to come up the ground. Obviously, Obzon strategies want that, but he's a defensive card. He's not always going to make your cut. Dragon Loft Idol. Now, this is one artifact I can get behind just because there's so many dragons in the deck. And when there's a dragon that you control in play, he gets a +1/+1 counter flying and trample. So he becomes a 4/4 flying trampler for 4 in most cases. I like that. So he's a good guy. I would use him. I mean, if you are in a situation where you really aren't playing a lot of dragons, then maybe not. But for the most part, I think he's safe to play in this block. The only thing I would say, you want to be careful though. You can get 2 for 1 here. If you attack in with him and a dragon, your dragon gets destroyed, and then he loses his abilities and gets blocked by a 4/4 ground pounder or something, then you lose 2 cards. So there's some risk here, but he's an okay guy. And here's another of the monuments. We'll just take a quick look at it, but similar thoughts that I have with the previous one. Gate Smasher, and this is just really bad equipment. I don't know. It costs 3 to cast and 3 to equip. It can only be equipped on creatures with toughness 4 or greater. I mean, it does give trample, and that is a thing if you need to get some damage across and you're in a board stall. But I'll be honest, I just don't see me putting this in my limited deck in most cases. There's just so many better things out there. Keeper of the Lens. Here's another one that just kind of is ho-hum to me. He only costs 1. He's a early blocker, I guess, but looking at a face-down creature, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's better than I'm thinking it is, but I just don't feel like it's that big of a deal. I'm just going to play around the threats I need to play around. I don't necessarily have to know for sure what it is, and taking up a card in my deck to do that just doesn't feel strong enough. But there's cases you might be looking for a creature and you need one more, so he's there for you. And here's one more of the monuments. Another monument, Ujete. And I believe this is the last one, Solmagar. And then we get to Spider Silk Net. And it's a 0 equipment. It's not a very exciting equipment. It does give you, now there are a lot of dragons out there, so if you find yourself vulnerable to flyers, you might throw this in your deck. And hey, watch out for those 0 casting cost cards, because usually there's something broken you can figure out to do with them, especially in a constructed format. But nothing too exciting here. Not a horrible card, but nothing too exciting. Storm Rider Rig. Costs 2, and it costs 2 to equip. Gives creature +1/+1. I don't hate this card though, because when you play a creature, you can equip it for free. So it's only +1/+1, but sometimes that's a big deal. I kind of like this card. I'm not saying it would always make my limited build, but every once in a while I could see myself playing this one if I had nothing better to do with the 2 drop. Tapestry of the Ages. This is just expensive and conditional. It costs 4 and then 2 to activate, and you have to be casting non-creature spells. So maybe in some Jeskai builds it's fine. I mean, drawing cards is good, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like it's a little too situational and pricey to really make the cut most of the time. Vial of Dragonfire, and this is fine removal. It costs 2 to cast, it costs 2 to use, which feels like a lot, but this card reminds me a lot of Blazing Torch. Blazing Torch is a surprisingly good card if you've ever played with it in Limited, so I think this is going to be fine in Limited, especially in a world with morph creatures. I wouldn't be afraid to put this in my deck, and probably quite a high percentage of the time, honestly. Now, as far as Constructed goes, obviously it is too slow for that. Evolving Wilds, and this is a great reprint. It's a nice, reliable color fixing land at the common level, and in this set it's going to be great for you. It's going to either help you cast some of those great dragons, or it's going to help you splash for additional dragons, and always a strong card. It even shows up occasionally in Standard when it's been Standard legal, so you never know, it could get there again. And our last card of the whole Dragons of Tarkir set review, Haven of the Spirit Dragon, and this is actually a pretty decent card. It gives you colorless mana as long as you have a deck that you can afford to take that hit and use for colorless mana. So probably a 2-color deck is going to be fine. Maybe a 2-color that just splashes for a 3rd color. But what's nice about this is you can tap it to add a mana of any of your color to cast a dragon. So this gives you a little more versatility in your builds to maybe try to splash to get a dragon, or splash some of these really awesome dragons in. These guys are houses, you're going to want to play with them. And the secondary ability to kind of get a dragon creature back from your graveyard into your hand is pretty good, especially if you have a dragon that gets removed, you have a chance to get it back. That's nice. As far as the Ugin piece goes, I was trying to think if there's a way to exploit that, like in Modern Tron or something, to use this as almost like if I can get Ugin into my graveyard, could this thing be like an Ugin tutor? I couldn't really think of a good way to do it. Maybe someone else can. It just seems like you're jumping through hoops. It's just easier. There's just easier ways to do it. But you never know. That could become relevant at some point if someone figures it out. So, having said all that, that is the final card. I can't believe we made it. If you've watched all these videos, thank you for joining me on this journey through Dragons of Tarkir. It's a big set, and it was very important to me to try to get these videos out as soon as possible. So today being Wednesday, the pre-release is Friday night and Saturday and Sunday. So hopefully it'll give you some time to learn about these cards, or at least view these cards, think about them before the pre-release, and good luck at your local pre-releases. Now that we're done with this series, and my plans for the rest of the week, I really want to be able to play some Legacy Cube drafts. So I'm going to try to do that, maybe get one or two of those up in the next week or two in the channel. And I also have some pack openings that I've already recorded over the last few weeks since I've been doing all the spoilers. I do want to put some of those product openings out there. So a lot of great stuff. I'm going to continue to get a video out every day. So if you haven't had a chance to subscribe, definitely a good time to do so. And as always, thank you again and have a great day.